All right, so welcome back once again. Today we are going to be starting with a proper design, and as you can see from my screen here, we are going to be starting with this basic design to put everything that we have been talking about since together there. And what's this design all about? Nothing much there. It's just a way for us to see how to connect your HTML and CSS together in a proper way there like that, because everything we've been talking about since is just all about HTML separately or CSS separately, but now we want to combine them together by using it to build what we have here like this. So all those properties, all those elements that we've talked about, we start using them properly based on the design that is given to us. And as you can see here, this simple design we want to work on. This is how you are going to be given a design or the website or whatever stuff you want to work on there like that. Then it's now left for you to translate everything that is given to you to a proper stuff that the user can use on the browser. So this image now, this is just a sample of how things are going to look like on the browser, but this is not the real stuff. So you, developer, the front-end developer, needs to translate everything you are seeing inside this image into the proper stuff that can show on the browser. And later on, you are going to see a lot of them that we're going to be working on there like that. I don't think you have this file, so I'm going to share it with you on WhatsApp. So I'm going to the zip file, I'm going to send it to you. Then you can put it on your system and unzip it so that you too you have this folder. And inside this folder, you see a bunch of other folders, and each one of them they are separate design that you can work on there like that. For example, now if I click on this calculator and go under the design, you are going to see the image of how this calculator is going to look like on the browser there. But this is not the real stuff. This is just image or a mock-up that is showing you how things are going to look like. But you now, you need to be able to design this, everything that is here. You need to be able to design it using your HTML, CSS, and later on with JavaScript so that it can work. So when you press 1, it will show 1 where you have this 399 whatever stuff. This is just a sample of what is going to display as you are pressing the number here like that. But for now, we don't care about the JavaScript. We only want to work on the HTML and the CSS part. And that's the reason why we want to start with this basic one. We are not jumping into that calculator yet because there's a lot of things going on that one. So we want to start with the simple one. Then from there, we progress through to the other design. And later on, we are going to get into JavaScript. And once we get to JavaScript, we now combine everything together again to now work on a design that requires the 3 of them. Because you need the power of the 3 before you can have something meaningful there these days. So before you can have anything meaningful, JavaScript have to be there because that's what is going to add interaction. Like what I just click here is bringing out this option, and if I click somewhere else, it closes back. So you too should be able to do everything that is happening here. But in order for you to be able to do that, you need JavaScript. But for now, we don't care about that. As you can see here, there is no interaction on the element or this design that we want to work on, and the CSS too is not that much, and that's the reason why I'm picking it for our first project that we're going to work on. And as you can see in my VS Code, I already have this projects folder, and this is where we're going to be putting on our project there. And as you can see, I have this QR code, which is the same thing as this project that we want to work on here. So for every project that we're going to be working on, there's going to be a separate folder for each one of them, and that's how you always work. Because when you're working on different projects, they are going to be in their own separate folder. And whatever stuff that's related to that project are going to be part of that folder there like that. Just like the design that I want to work on right now. So there's some assets that we need, like the colors and the QR code that you're seeing here. This is image. So where do we get all these assets? Each one of the design that you're going to be working on, they are going to have this folder of images. And some of them is going to be assets if it's giving you the font. And apart from that, we have this style guide. This is where you are going to see all the colors that you are going to be using for the project. And inside this index.html, this is where you are going to see all the text that design is using. So all the text you are seeing here, we are not going to be typing it by ourselves. Everything has been given to you and they are inside the folder of the project you want to work on. So if it's the image that you need, you open this folder and you're going to see all of them there. If it is one, it will only see one. If it is more than one, as you can see here, it is only one asset that is here. But now if I go to this calculator on, just going back there under the images, you'll see that this one is not even having anything at all because everything are going to be done from the CSS and the HTML. But if I go to another design that actually have a lot of things, for example, like this bookmark now, landing page, and if I open it, can you see this one have a lot of assets there that you need to use for the project. And all these things, you don't need to start looking for them online. Whatever project you want to work on, just enter the folder. You are going to see all the necessary materials that requires of that design. So just like the one we want to work on here, the only thing that we need here is just this image, which is what we are going to put here, like that. But how do we use the image? Don't forget, you already know how to include image on your page. But we don't really have the assets right now inside this place. So what I will do is just to drag it so that I can have a copy inside that my project. And as you can see, I now have a copy inside the project that we want to work on, because that's another project entirely, or that's another folder entirely. So you need to copy all the assets into this place. Since it's just one image that we want to use, that's why I just copy only that image here. But assuming the thing is much now, I will copy the entire folder. So I don't need to be copying them one by one. I will just drag the entire folder here and it's going to make a copy of it, because we need this image in order for us to be able to have this design that we have here. And as you can see, when you want to have your design, the first thing you have to do is to work with your HTML, which is what we normally do. So the first thing you have to do is to set up your HTML. And what do you need to do with your HTML? You need to set up the layouts, or you need to set up the structure. Then inside the body, you generate all the necessary content that your design needs. And as you can see here, if you want to work on this, the first thing we need to do is to generate our page structure, which you know how to do that already by using any of the methods that I've already talked about. So for the title, I'm going to call it a QR code project like this. So that's going to be the title of the page. And inside the body, that's where we're going to put everything that the user needs to see there. And what does the user needs to see here? As you can see, you can think of this entire area here as the body. And inside the body, we now have this container there like that. And inside this container, we have the image, we have this title, and we have this text, or we have the heading, and we have the paragraph there like that. And that's how you are going to be doing all this thing. So you look at the image, you look at the element that is there, then based on the elements, you relate it to the HTML. So based on whatever the content you have there, you relate it to the HTML that is going to generate that for you on the page. So if you look at it here, the entire stuff here is the body. Then inside the body, we have this container. By now, you know how to create a container there like that by using div, section, and so forth like that. And inside the container, as you can see, we have image. By now, you know the HTML tag to generate image. And after that, we have this heading text. By now, you know the tag to generate heading text. And after that, we have paragraph like this. By now, too, you know the element to, or the tag to generate the paragraph. And that's what you'll be doing. You have the design, then you use your HTML to translate everything to what is going to show on the browser. Then you now use the CSS to make sure that the styling is looking the same there like that. Because, you know, HTML will not give you the styling like this. So HTML doesn't give you any styling. It's just there to generate element. Then you now need the CSS to make everything to look like the way you want. And this is how you're always going to see me doing all this thing, because when you want to work, you need to know how you are going to lay out the content on a page. And what did I mean by layout? How are you going to relate the content you have there into what you need to generate in your HTML? And as you can see here, the first line that I have outside here, let me draw the line again. So this one now is going to be the body, because that's the entire area of whatever the user is going to see there. But apart from that, inside the body, we are going to have a container. So which means we need to create a div or any other container element that I've talked about. Then inside that container, as you can see, we are going to have image. So which means when you are generating this image, you know that it's supposed to be inside that container that you created. And that's this why I'm putting all this line, because this line will help you to visualize how you are going to generate all the elements or all the tags there in your HTML. And after that image inside the container, we are going to generate our heading text. And after that one, we are going to generate the paragraph. And that's this stuff that I'm doing here is still the same thing you always do for all your elements or all the design that you work on. You look at them, are they related to each other? What are the elements you need to use, or what are the tags you need to use to generate that particular element that you are seeing there like that. So let me go back into the VS Code. So we have the body, which is what we call this entire area there. But inside the body, as you can see, we need to have a container. So how do you create a container? I told you we have the div element that you can use. We have section. This is another container or another generic container. We have header like that. Apart from header, we have article and a lot of them that we already talked about under the semantic. So under the semantic, or where is it? Where did I even put it? Okay, is it here? I put it somewhere. Okay, is it inside? Let me check my CSS. It should be here. So we've talked about a lot of them like that. Let me scroll down. Where did I put it? Where did I put them? Where did I put them? Where did I put them? Yeah, so as you can see, I have this div here. I have the div element. I saw it now. I saw one of them here. So so I have this div, which is the one that is grouping a particular section together, or different elements together there. So the same way we can do it too to create the container for our elements there like that. But it's not only div that you can use. We have a lot of them, just like what I just mentioned not too long ago. We have the section, we have the header, and so forth like that. But for now, I'm going to be using the main element. So which means this one is the one that is going to group the major content on the page. So if you go back to all the videos that we've made in the past, that I talked about semantic, so you can go through the stuff again to see all these elements there like that. So this main is the one that is going to act as a container. This white box is what I'm calling container, because it's the one that is holding all this other content inside it. That's what I'm calling it, container. So sometimes some people will call it wrapper, or some people will call it container. It's the same thing. You just have one element that is grouping other elements together. That's what we call container or wrapper. And here now, I'm using the main element to group all the other content that is going to be inside it. So the white box is the container. White is the container. Here is holding the image, this text, and this other text there. But you know, the two texts are not the same thing. This is heading text, and this is a paragraph there. So in order for us to generate the image, by now you know that you are supposed to use the img tag. And where is this image coming from? The image is coming from the same folder that I'm working on. So what I just need to do is to type the name of the file. And once I type the name, it will bring out the image out, and it will complete it for me. But what you need to do is that when the file are inside the same folder, which is something we've talked about too, you know, you just mention the name of the file and along with the extension of that file, which is what is happening here like this. But if it is inside another folder, you know, we now talked about the next folder or child folder, and again we talked about the parent. But right now I'm not using all those one because it's just a simple project and it's just one image that we have. So the image is inside the same folder where we have the index.html and the style.css. But that's not how it's always going to be every time, because if you have a lot of files, you don't just want to put everything together in one folder. You might need to, you know, create a separate folder for each one, or for different assets that you have. Then you can now reference them from that folder. But since it's just simple stuff that we have here, just 3 files, so we can put all of them together under the project folder. But if it is not like this, or you have a lot of files, you might need to group them into a nested folder. And when you are doing that, you need to know how you are going to be connecting them together through the child folder or the parent folder that we've talked about. But for this one, I'm using the same folder linking, and that's the reason why I'm passing the name of it like this. And once this thing is saved and it's loaded on the browser there, we are going to have the results coming out on the screen. But right now, I don't really have it on the browser because I've not really started my server. So in order for us to have this on the browser, we just need to go live so that this thing can run this stuff every time we save the file, which is something we are used to already. So we have been doing this already, but let me make this thing to wrap to next line so that I don't need to be scrolling left and right. Yeah. So once this thing is done, it's going to show on the browser. And as you can see, the image is showing already. So what do we need to put again after the image? We need to put this text, which is the heading text. And how do you generate heading text? By now, you should know that. So, but I'm going to be using H1 because this is the major heading on the page, and it's the only heading we have there, and it's still the major one. So that's why I'm using the H1. Like, you can use H2, H3, all the way to A6, but your major heading on the page should always be H1 there. Then the next major heading that is sub to that one can now be H2 and so forth like that. So that's the reason why all these classes are there. So for you to know when and where to use all the tags, even though you know them, but you need to know when to use them and where to use them. So like this H1 I'm using here now, the reason I'm using H1 is because the heading we have here, this is the major heading on this page, and it's still the only one. So I'm using H1 for it. But that doesn't mean if you use other heading tag, it will not work. It will still work, and you can even style it anyhow you want. But we have something known as hierarchy when you are doing your design. So all the major heading should always be H1. So the sub major heading will be H2, the sub one will be H3, and so forth like that, depending on how you have your content on the page. And you're going to see all this thing being used later on with the other design that has a lot of content there like that. But for this one, we only have one heading, we only have one paragraph, and we only have one image. But that's not how it's only going to be for all the design. So you might have like 100 image, you can have 10 image, 2 image, depending on the design you are working on. But for this one, we only have one image. And how do we get the text? I told you the design you are working on, inside the folder where you get all these assets from, there's another file there, which is this index.html. So inside this index.html, that's where you are going to see all the text that you are going to be using for the design. If you want to type it yourself, you can type it, but that's waste of time. You can open this index in another editor in your browser, or you can open it with any other editor, or you open it with VS Code directly so that you can copy the stuff. So what you can just do is to drag it to VS Code, and it's going to open it up in another tab there. And if you scroll down, as you can see, all the text that we need for the design are here. But because we are dealing with this simple design, that's why it is just simple stuff like this. But once you start working with other design, you are going to see a lot of text here arranged properly for you. You just need to go to the area where you need the text and you copy what you need to copy there. So here now, I'm going to copy this content for this one, go back to my main file, then paste what I copied there like that. Then after this H1, we need a paragraph, which is the second text. And again, to that second text to everything are here. Just open the index.html file that is inside that folder of the project you are working on, and you are going to see everything there, all the text that you need to use in the project. So you don't need to keep typing them every time you need those texts. So you just need to open the file, then copy it and paste it where you need the stuff. And here now, I can save the file, and once you save, now we have the content. So we are done with the HTML. But if you look at this right now, this thing is not looking like what we have here. And that's where CSS comes in. Because HTML, we only give you the structure, not the styling. So if you need the styling, then you need to apply CSS on your element so that it can look like the way you want it to look like there, like that. So if you look at it now, we are done with the HTML. Here we have the image, the container is here, but this thing did not even look like the container is here at all. But by the time we started playing with the CSS, or by the time we started applying CSS, you see that everything will start coming into shape. And if you notice too, look at this image. If you see the edge of all this image, you see that it is sharp. But if you look at the original stuff or the design, as you can see, the edge is curved. So all this thing will come through the CSS. Even though the image that is given to you is not like that, you have the CSS to do it. And we already talked about all the necessary property that you can use to achieve everything that we have on this page. So the next thing we need to do now is to connect our CSS. And as you can see here, I already have my style.css, but it's not connected yet. So how do you connect CSS? We've talked about this one. So I'm going to be using the external CSS by just using link. And once you press enter, it will also complete it for you. The only thing you just need to pass is the name of the CSS file that you want to connect to. Now, our HTML is connected to the CSS file. So which means whatever we're going to be doing from this file is going to appear on the page. And in order for us to see everything that is going on, so I want to move this to side by side so that we can see the updates are there like that. And what do you need to do? So when you are working on your design in CSS, we have something called reset. So in CSS, we have something called reset. And what is reset there for? Reset is there for you to turn off some stuff or for you to change some default styling that the browser is doing for you there like that. For example, here now, look at this edge. You can see there is some white space around this edge here. We are not the one that put this space here. So the space is there automatically by the browser. So the browser is applying this space automatically there. But we don't need it because we don't want any space where we don't need it. Anywhere I need space, I want to be the one that is going to apply it there. Anywhere I need to remove space, I will remove it. Anywhere I need to add it, I will add it. Not that the browser will be adding it like this. So all this spacing you are seeing here is being added by the browser. But these are not the spacing you want. And you don't want this thing to be adding unnecessary stuff for you. And that's where the CSS reset comes in. So in CSS, you can remove some of the basic styling on your elements that the browser is applying by default. And anytime you need any setting, then you are going to be doing it yourself by targeting each one of the elements that you want to apply the setting. And in the reset, we have this basic reset that you can do. And you know, when you want to apply everything to, or when you want to do reset for all the elements, we have the universal selector that I've talked about. So universal selector, you know, it allows you to select everything on the page. So which means whatever we are going to be doing here is going to apply to all the elements, everything we have here, right from the HTML all the way to body. So right from this HTML all the way to everything that is in that body, including the body, it's going to apply whatever you are doing here to them. And what do we want to do here? So the basic setting you always do here is by setting your margin to 0. And that's the spacing you are seeing here. The spacing you are seeing here is on the body that the browser is applying by default. So on the left and right is applying margin on your element. The same thing too with your H1 to H6. The same thing too with your paragraph. It's used to apply margin bottom to them. And that's the reason why you see that we have some of this spacing here. So this spacing here and this spacing here, they are coming from the margin that the browser is applying on this element by default. But we don't need it. And that's the reason why we are selecting everything. I'm not just talking about H1. I'm not talking about paragraph. I'm not talking about image only. I'm selecting any element you are using on the screen. So whatever element that is on the screen, I want to change them. So whatever element that is on the screen, I want to remove margin that is there. And once I save this in, you see, by the time you get to the browser, can you see now that spacing and everything that is in between them has been removed. So all the spacing in between all these elements has been removed. So this is one of the settings you always do every time you are working with CSS. So you are going to remove the margin on all the elements so that it will not apply anything you don't want on that element. So anywhere you need the spacing, you are going to be doing it yourself So you managing it yourself is better than the browser doing it, because if the browser is doing it for you, it might do what you don't want. As you can see before, it was adding some unnecessary space here that we don't want. But here, you turn it off. Another thing we normally do is to turn the padding to 0 too. So all the elements on the page, their padding to is going to be 0. So anywhere I need it, I will be the one that will apply the padding myself. And another very important one that you are going to be doing here is known as this box sizing. And this thing too is very, very important. Yeah, this is how the browser is going to be doing the calculation of padding and along with the weights that you are giving to your elements later on. But for now, just know that you are always going to be setting it to this border box. By default, the browser is using content box, but what you want is border box. So this is another setting you need to do, because what the browser is using by default is not what you want. So what you actually want is this border box. And this is the basic setting that you always do when you are starting with your CSS for any design. So any page you are working on and you are connecting to CSS, so the first thing you always do is to do this basic reset. Later on, when you be using framework, they will do all these things for you. But since we are the one doing everything by ourselves right now, you have to do this reset so that the browser doesn't apply some imaginary spacing that you don't want beside your element. So anyway, we need the spacing, will be the one that is going to apply it later on, not that the browser will be doing it for us. So yeah, the margin is 0, the padding is 0, the box sizing is border box, and lastly, this one is optional there like that. So this one I used to set my font family to, so that since all the text on the page are going to be using the same text there, the same font, so I normally set it inside this place. Sometimes some text might be different, so you can do all those ones later on separately inside the selector. But the one that I normally use, I used to set it in the this side here. So, and by default, I used to use the system design or system UI, which is going to come with some bunch of fonts that is coming from sans serif that we've already talked about. So let me use this view word wrap so that I can move them to next line. Yeah. So as you can see, so font family, once you type system UI, is going to come with some predefined fonts that are coming from this sans serif. So I don't like the fonts that is using right now for our text. So I want to use something that is closer to this. Even though the design we are working on actually give us the fonts we need to use. I will get to that one soon, or in the next class I'll be talking about how to connect to Google Fonts. But in this class, we just want to start with simple stuff. So I don't want to bombard this class with too much of stuff there. So that's the reason why I'm using this system UI as our font family, which is a font that is going to be closer related to this, because this font now is coming from sans serif family. As you can see, at the end of it, there is this sans serif, which is something I've explained clearly there in our video, in one of the past videos that we've add there like that. So if you see any more clearance of this, go through the video and you get this in more. But yeah, I'm just using everything that we've talked about before. So this one, what it's going to do is to try to look for this font or this font or this font or this font. Any one of them that it can find, that's what it will use. But if it cannot find any one of them here, then it will go back to the default sans serif that you have on the system or wherever they are checking this in from. So whatever browser they are using, whatever that browser is coming from, whatever the gadgets that browser is coming from, is going to look for this font there and it will apply it on your element. Going back to the page, as you can see, all the text has changed now to sans serif and is using the default sans serif on my system there like that. So what next do we need to do? So the next thing we need to do is to apply our background. Make sure that this box is white. This background on the body is not white, so we need to use this color. Then on the container, we need to use white background. We need to make sure there is a space inside the box, which is padding there like that. We need to make sure that this box is rounded, and we need to make sure it's at the center like this. But how do we do that? How do we do that? So we need all the colors that we want to use for the project. So where do we get the colors for the project? The same way we get all the text for the project, that same way we are going to get all the colors. So if you look at the file again, or the folder where we are getting where we get the design from, what you need to do is to open the style guide. So what you need to do is to open the style guide, just like the way we did for the index.html. So I'm going to drag it to VS Code so that I can open it. And as you can see, all the color that you need for the project, they are here. So for the blue, this is the color code. For the red, this is the color code, but I'm not opening the correct stuff. This is not the correct project because I did not see any red in the project. Let me open the correct folder. So going back to that place, so I actually opened this bookmark, but I'm supposed to be inside this QR. Yeah. So this is where it's supposed to be. Let me open this in once again. So drag it because that color is not corresponding to the design. Yeah. So as you can see, so the design, these are the colors that is being used here. So we have the dark blue, we have the grayish blue, we have the light gray, and we have the white. Like that. But white is common in CSS. There is a name for it. So there is no need for you using this code. So whether you type white or this code, they are the same thing. But this one is not blue. This is like a custom blue there like that. But white is always white. There is no custom white. The same thing to black is always black, except if you want to create a shade of them, which is not going to be this same code that you have here like that. So what do we need to do now? We need to apply the background color on the body. So which means in our CSS, we need to target the body. So that's the next thing you are going to do. So you need to target the body. And what are the stuff you need to do in the body? The first thing you should always do inside the body is by setting the weight to 100%. This is the first thing you should always do inside body. Anytime you are working with the body, the first thing you should do is set the weight to 100%. Again, to the max weight should always be 100%. We don't want it to go more than 100. We don't want the user to be scrolling from left to right. The body will always be 100%. But there's some content later on they are crazy that they can go outside. So any one of them that want to go outside, we can use overflow X. We've talked about overflow, which is what you can use to make your content to scroll or to even hide it. So, and as you can see, I'm talking about the X only because later on you might want the Y. So as you can see that I can scroll up and down. This is Y. But I don't want to scroll on the horizontal axis. That is X. And that's the reason why I'm talking about overflow X. I did not say overflow. Because if you say overflow, it will apply to both the X and Y. But here, I'm only focusing on the X. And what did I want there? I want it to be hidden. So in case we have any content that is going to be scrolling later on the X and Y, we don't want anything like that. Just cut them out. We don't want anything to scroll on the left and right of the body, but it can scroll up and down because that one is common. On every page, you will be able to scroll up and down, but you don't see it scrolling left and right. No, because scrolling up and down is easier compared to you scrolling left and right. So the same thing here too. You're going to tell the body that you don't want anything to go outside of it. Whatever the weight, which is 100%, which is going to cover up the entire browser that you have there. So we don't want it to go outside. These are some of the basic settings you'll be doing there. Another one that we normally do is this mean height. So this body, the way it works is that it used to stop wherever your content stops. But because this image that we have right now is really big, that's why you see that the content is actually getting down. But the content are not getting down like this. So it's because the image is really big. If I reduce the image, or once I reduce the image, you see that every other content will go up. And wherever your content stop, that's where body is going to stop. But now imagine you have small content, which is something you are going to have later on, depending on what you are working on. So you always want the body to have the height of 100 VH. And what is that? What I want here is that no matter the content that is inside the body, I always want the height of the body to have this minimum. And that's why it is mean height. So I talked about the mean height. Mean height means that this thing can increase later on, but it can't go less than this value. And that's what I want here. My body, I always want it to have a minimum height of the entire browser that you are working on. Even though it can increase later on, I don't care. But the minimum must be the height of the browser. And how do you get the height of the browser? We've talked about the VH. So the VH is talking about 100% of the height of the box like that. Then we have the VW, which is talking about the horizontal. But now I'm not talking about horizontal. I'm talking about the vertical. So that's why I'm using 100 VH here. So which means no matter the content you have inside this body, the body will always have the height of whatever this stuff that you have, the entire white area that we have here. And you're going to see this thing in action later on when we are dealing with some other design that are not using pure background and your content is not even getting down here. You are going to see all this thing in action. But for now, this is what you always do. So width should be 100%, max width is 100%, overflow X should be hidden, and the minimum height should be 100%. These are the basic settings you always use on the body. So for your page, these are the resets you always do. Then for the body, these are the resets you do inside the body there. Every other thing is not less for you based on your design. But this one, they are the basic stuff that you always do. All this one will always be there every time. But every other thing will be your design that you are working on. So every other property you want to use now is based on the design that you want to work on like that. And another one that we normally do is on the image, which I'm not going to do right now so that you can see it in action. But for now, I will just leave it like this, but I will come back into it because it has its own resets that we normally do there like that. It's not much that you need it. You can actually go and do it later on where you are using the image. But it's always good that you do this reset so that in case you have a lot of images on your page later on, it will apply to all of them at once. Not that you'll be changing them one by one. So this is the basic setting you always do for your page structure in the CSS. This is the basic setting you always do for the body of every page that you are working on there like that. Then every other thing that follows now is now based on your design. And as you can see, our design here, it have this background that we need to apply. So how do we apply background color? You know the property to use there, which is the background color property. And what is the color that we are to use? So going back into the style guide, we just need to go there, and I think he's using this light gray. So let me copy it and try it, and if it is the same color, then that's the one I need. So paste and save. Going back to the screen, do we have it? And as you can see now, the background is now there. So it's no more white. It's now using the background that we want on the body. So the body now is having the background that we want. So what next do we need to do? We need to work on this container. And what do we use for the container? So going back to the HTML, as you can see, our container is this main. So which means we need to apply this background of white on it. We need to make it rounded at the edge like this. And we need to move it to the center of its parent. So how do we move it to the center from its parent? You know, that's where flex comes in, which we are going to get into soon. But first, let's style out our container. So by selecting the container, I'm using the element tag to select it because that's the only one I have there. But you know that we have different way of selecting your element. But right now I'm using the simple way because we are dealing with simple design. But later on, if you have multiple main on your screen or inside your HTML, you might need to give them class or ID so that you'll be able to target them in the CSS properly. But since it's the only one that I have here, so I'm using the element selector or type selector to pick it. And what do we need to do there? We need to apply the background there. So we need to apply background. And what's the background there? It is white. So going back to the screen, you'll see that the box now is going to be white. But it looks like we are not seeing our background of the body again. Why? It's because the container is actually getting around everything, like the container foot everywhere. So, and this is not the way we want it to be. If you look at the original design, it did not fool everywhere. So it's just small inside the box, and that's where width comes in. So that's where width comes in. So here now, what we can do is to use width of, for example, now let's just use 90% for now, and we can save it. So once this thing is saved and we go back to it, as you can see now, it's taking 90% of whatever is container. I've talked about the percentage in the previous classes there, so I don't need to be going over this thing again. Whatever the container of that element, it will take the percentage of that stuff. So since the body is the container of that main or is the parent of that main, then it's taking the 90% of it. But this thing is not looking right. If you look at it on this thing is not big like that, but on small screen is actually using something like this. Is a big screen, but now if I go to the next design, as you can see, this is how it's going to look like on small screen. So on small screen, as you can see, it's full its parents like that, but on a big screen, as you can see, it's just a small box. So how can we achieve this? We've talked about all the property that we can use. So let me bring the dev mode so that we can emulate the design properly. So here now, let me go to the mobile. As you can see what is happening? Can you see what is happening? Look at this image. The image is now going outside of its parent. The image is inside this white box. On the desktop, as you can see, no problem, because we have enough screen and that screen is bigger than the image. But now on small screen, that the image is really big. Can you see what is going on? The image is overflowing on the stuff like this, and that's where this stuff that I put at the top comes in. So we have the basic setting we normally do on the image, because this is what they will do. When you have your image and that image is bigger than the container, it will always go outside of it. If you have enough screen to take over the stuff, as you can see, it's because the image is still inside it, so there is no problem. But once the image is bigger than the container, the image will always go outside of that parent, because the image will want to maintain its original size. But that's not what we want. Anywhere you put the image, whatever the size of that container, that's what we want the size of the image, the maximum of that image to be. So the image can expand, it can reduce, but it can go or it can expand more than the container where it's being used. And what can you do with that? You can actually talk to the image, but we normally make it as a generic setting, and that's the reason why I'm putting it at the top. But instead of putting it at the top, you can actually put it down here too if you want. But later on, when you have a lot of images in your design, so it's better you put the generic setting at the top, then any specific setting, then you can apply them down here. And that's the reason why I put it at the top here. And what is the generic setting that we need to do here? The generic setting that you need to do here is the max width. So this image, we know that you can expand, but don't expand more than the container. That's what we are saying here. Don't forget, percentage is always working on the parent. So what we are saying here is that this image, wherever you are being used, whatever the size of the container, that's what is going to be your maximum size. Even if you are bigger than the container, as you can see right now, the image is bigger than the container. But we don't want it to be like that. Whatever the size of the container, that's what is going to be your maximum size too, not the original size of the image. And once I save this code now, you see that everything will be adjusted now. Can you see? Automatically, the image will be resized and it will never go more than the container where you are using it. You can change the size if you want, but with this, it will make sure that any image that is bigger than its container will never go outside of where they are being used. But look at this container now. It's not placed at the center. It's aligned to the left. But in the original design, even on mobile, if you look at it, it's at the center of the page. So how can we move it to the center of the page? The first thing we need to do is to go to our body first and apply some padding first, so that we have some space inside the body. So I'm going to use 1 rem as a space inside the body, which is going to apply some spacing around the body there or inside the body. You might be thinking, why can't I just leave the margin that is there before? That margin is bad. What you need is padding. Anytime you're talking about the spacing inside, not outside, what you are going to use is the padding. And as you can see now, we have some space around the box, but the box is still not at the center. So how can we move the box to the center? If you remember, we talked about the flex, where you can use flex to move your items to center and you can justify it to center. When you display any element as flex, whatever that is inside it can be moved to the center horizontally and on the vertical axis. So to move to the horizontal there, what we just need to do is to use justify content. So when you say justify content center, which is something that we've talked about under the flex property, again too, we can align the items to center. Don't forget, when you display as flex, the direction is row, and when the direction is row, justify is horizontal and align is vertical. So which means this one that I have here, this justifier, what it's just going to do is to move it to the center. As you can see now, it has been moved to the center on the horizontal axis. But what if you want to do the same thing too for the vertical axis like that? As you can see, we're still going to do all this thing. It will not look like this on the desktop. I will still get into this one. It's looking nice on the mobile, but it's not looking nice on the desktop. So we'll still get back into this later on. But look at it here now. What if I want it to be at the center of the parent in the horizontal or in the vertical there too? Then we can use align items. And this one is going to make sure that your content, whatever the body size, is always going to go to the center of it. So here and here, the spacing will be equal. Left and right, the spacing will be equal. That's justify. Justify will make sure that the left and right spacing are equal, and the align will make sure that the top and the bottom are equal when your direction is row, which is what is there by default. But when your direction is column, don't forget they will switch place. So if you need more about this, look at the video that we where we discuss about this thing in details. But we're always going to be using these three properties. We're always going to be using them a lot as from next class, because they are stuff that you're going to be using to lay out your element, to place them side by side, place them on top of each other, or do anything that you want to do with the spacing that is left in the container there like that. And as you can see now, this thing is looking nice, but something is missing there. What is missing? We need this rounded edge. Again, we need the spacing inside the white box. And you know that anytime you need spacing inside the box, what do you need to do? You need to apply padding. Anytime you need to apply spacing inside the box, you need to apply padding. So I'm going to be using 1 rem here. And as you can see now, we now have spacing inside the white box. So the next thing we need to do is to make sure the edge is rounded. So how can you do that? We've talked about the border radius, which is one that is going to make your edge of the box to curve out like that. So here too, I'm going to be using 1 rem like that as the value. And as you can see now, the edge of the box is now curved. And that's what we need to do with the image too. Because if you look at the design we are working on, the image too is rounded a bit like that. So it's like half of what is up here like that. So we need to do it for the image. And how can we do it for the image? So I'm going to be selecting the image down here like that. Or since it's the only image that we have on the page and we already have it here, so I'm just going to use it at the top here. But it's not a must that you have to do it like this. And again too, I'll be moving this image down since it's the only one we have there. But later on, when you have multiple image and you are doing this reset, it's always good that you put it at the top so that every other image are going to take from it like that. But since it's the only one image we have, so I'm moving it down here like that, and I'm going to apply border radius of this around 0.75 rem like that, which is 12 pixels. So save, and as you can see now, that image too is now rounded. So the next thing we need to work on is this our text here, because this text is really big. If you look at the original design that we are working on, as you can see, the text is not that big like that. So we need to apply the size. So we've talked about all our font size and a lot of other text property that you can use there. So after this, I'm going to be selecting my H1 like that. And if you look at this thing too, the color there is not actually black. This color is not black. The color is using is what is coming from here. Is this dark blue? So he's not using black. You can see design is not saying we are using any black. So he's using this dark blue. So I'm going to copy it, go back to that place, then give it the color as this one, then save, going back to the page, and once it's done loading, you'll see that the color is going to change. Even though it looks like black, yeah, it still looks like it's black, but it's not black. It's a dark blue. That's why they call it dark blue, because that color is close to black. As you can see, it's close to dark area like that, because the lightness is below 50%. When the lightness is above 50%, you are going to the white area of the color. And when it is below 50, you are going to the dark area of the color. And as you can see, it's close to 0. So that's why we have the... So here now, if I choose maybe something like 72 now, you see that the same color, but now it's not using the light version of it because it's close to 100. Close to 100 is lightness. Close to 0 is dark. So here, I will go back to the default one that is there. And again, the font size, which is not what is supposed to be there, because right now he's using 2 rem, but that's not what I want. So I want to use 1.5 rem as the font size, and I think it's even too big, so I'm going to use it 20 pixels. And as you can see right now, we have this the spacing like that. But look at the text. If you look at the text, it's at the center. Again too, there's a spacing in between this text, this image, and this one here. So there's a space here. So how can we apply that space? We can use the gap from the appearance. So this is one space, this is another space here, and I want the space to be equal. So if you want the space to be equal, what you can do here is to go to this H1, give it the margin top and margin bottom, and it's going to space itself. But instead of you doing that, this is what I mean by that. So we can use margin block. Don't forget, margin block is just margin top and bottom. I've explained on this in our last classes that when we are talking about all these box properties like that, box model. So if I use 1 rem, what I'm saying here is the margin top will be 1 rem and margin bottom will be 1 rem. That's what we call margin block. Margin block is changing the top and bottom at the same time, while margin inline is changing left and right. So margin inline is changing left and right, margin block is changing top and bottom. But if you need any side, then you can mention that only that side. So here now, if I say margin left, this one will only work for the left, so nothing concerning about the right. And if you use margin right, it will only work for the right too. But I want to apply this in on top and bottom without me doing it on different line. If I want to do one line like this, what I have to do is to use margin top like this, 1 rem, and at the same time too, margin bottom like this, 1 rem. But instead of me wasting 2 lines like this, I can just do the same thing on 1 line. So this 1 line will do the job of these 2 lines when they are having the same. When they are having the same value, just use, even when they are not having the same value, you can still do it too on 1 line easily. So that's why I don't love to use this. But if you need any one of them separately, then you can mention it like that. And once this thing is saved, you see that, can you see now? There is now a space at the top and there is now a space at the bottom. That one, if you want to do it for this H1, which is what I'm going to do right now. But you can do it from the appearance too by displaying it as flex. Make sure that they are on top of each other, and you now apply gap, and it's going to put the gap in between all of them. So it's not depending on this one again. It will not be based on the parent. But here we are dealing with simple design, so I'm doing it from this H1. And another thing that needs to happen here is that all the text is supposed to be center. So we need to use text align. So which is what we can use to align your text to center. And once this thing is saved now, you see that the text that is by the left now is now at the center, which is the same thing we need to do with this our paragraph. And at the same time, we need to change the color of the text because it's not black. So I will go back into that place. So select my paragraph like this. So text align is going to be center. And once this thing is done loading, not text anchor, text align center like this. And once it is saved, you see that the text too here is going to be moved to the center so that it can look like what we have here, but the color are not the same. So let me go back to the code, go back into the style guide, and I think the color is this it should be this. Let me try this one. So copy this. No, it can't be that. It should be this. So copy this code, then go into that place. So color like this, then paste and save. Wait for it to load, and once it gets to the browser, then it's going to change. Yeah, as you can see now, the text has now been changed, and I don't need to, let me see, let me change the font size too, like that. And what font size that I want to use? I want to use 14 pixels. And what is 14 pixels in rem? And as you can see, since the unit I've been using is rem, I've already explained this in. Rem is really useful because later on, when the user change their browser font size, is going to update everything that you're using here. If you use pixels, pixels will always be the same value. So if it is 40, it will always be 40. But if it is rem and the user update their browser's font size, or they change their phone or the system font size, this thing is going to adjust automatically. are there. So you don't need to start coming here and change your design to match the font of the user. No, it will update everything accordingly, because the font here, the rem, is based on the font of the HTML. And what's the font of the HTML? Is 16 pixels by default if you don't change it. But that HTML is depending on the font of your system. So once that font change and you did not touch it before, then it's going to update this in automatically. And here I'm going to use 0.875, that's 14 pixels, 875 rem. And how do I know? It's because I work with all this value a lot. So the more you work all this in, the more you are going to get used to them. And again, to have an extension here that can do conversion for me. As you can see, it's showing that it is 14 here. Anytime I go to any one of them, it will give you the pixels value of the stuff beside it. This is an extension that you can install, so that anytime you are typing pixels or rem, it can do the conversion for you depending on the one you need there, like that. So once I save this one, you see that the text, it's going to have what it is here, but I think it's actually using 1 rem, which is what is there. So let me change it to 1 rem, which I don't even need to type at all, because this is what is going to be there by default, like that. And as you can see, we have this design which is looking nice on mobile, but as a problem, this design is not going to look nice on desktop. As you can see here, everything is not proper on desktop. And why is it not proper on desktop? Is because the box is bigger than what we have on desktop. Our own box is bigger than what we have on desktop. And why is it bigger? Is because of what we did here. We said the box is going to be 90% of its container. And what is the container? Is body. So since the body has already expanded, then the box too will expand. But I talked about something when we are discussing about this width. I told you that you can actually give this thing a max width, where you can talk to this thing that, okay, you know that 90% can be any value, but we don't want this thing to grow more than a specific value. So here now, this box, this 90%, it can be anything, because when the container expands, it will recalculate the final value of this 90%. So if the body is 1200, then it will take 90% of that 1200. If the body is 300 pixels wide, then it will take 90% of that 300 pixels wide. And that's what it's doing here. Because the body is really having a lot of size, so it's taking 90% of it. But we know that this thing can expand, though, but don't go more than a specific value. And that's where this max width comes in here. Because you don't want to make it to be a width, because you still want the thing to expand based on the browser. But once you get to a particular width, you don't want it to go more than that size. And here, I want to use 300 pixels here. So what am I saying here is that this is my box, as you can see now. So when you're on a particular screen that is below 300, it will expand there as you're expanding the box. But once you get to a screen that is less than 300, for example here now, let me use a bigger number like 500 here, as you can see here now. So once I expand the box, as you can see, it's expanding. But it will get to a particular point, it will not expand again. It will just stay at that value. So if I'm scrolling down, it will be calculating the value of 90%. That's the reason why we don't want to remove the width like that. It's staying at that percentage. But once you get to a particular width, don't increase again. And that's where this max width comes in. So max width is talking to the design. We know that your 90% can be any value. But once this 90% is bigger than 500, this is where you are going to stop. The width must not go more than this one. That's what we are using here. But this one is really much. So let me use 320 like this. And you see that once you have a small screen, it will calculate the value of 90% if it is below 320. But once the width, or once this value of 90% is bigger than 320, then the box will never go more than this one here. And as you can see, our design fits based on the screen you have. It will always maintain that 320 if it is bigger than 9. If this your 90% is bigger than 320, then it will maintain that 320. But if it is not bigger than that, then it will calculate the value of 90% there. And you can check all this in your dev tools by going into the element, then you go under the computed and you select the container you are working with. And if you go to the computed now and you scroll down to the width, as you can see, the width is 308. As you can see, that it's not using 320. because it's not up to that yet. So it's giving us the value of 90%. So the value of 90% is this 308. And since 308 is not bigger than this 320, that's why you're using that value. But once you get to a screen that is not, can you see? Once you get to a screen that 90% is not more than this 320, then it will not leave that 320. It will always use that 320 as the maximum. So when you are using percentage and you are dealing with max width or min width, so what you are saying here is that watch this value. So when this stuff is bigger than this value, you must not go more than that. That's max. So watch this value. If any other value is less than that, this is the minimum you must have. That's mean value, which is what we use in one place there, like that, which is this body. Or where did I use it? Or the height. I use it for the height with mean. So I know that this thing, it can have this small size. So, but from my own, anytime your size is not up to 100 VH, this is the minimum you must have. You can increase, but this is the minimum you must have. The same thing here too for the width. We know that 90% you can calculate the value anyhow you want, but that value must not go more than 320. Once the value go more than 320, this is the maximum that I want to use. So this is what it will result to. And as you can see now, it will never leave that 320. But once you go down to a size that is less than 320, then it will be using those values for all those screens. But once you go to a screen that is bigger than 320, or once the 90% is bigger than 320, then it will stop at that value there, like that. And as you can see here, we have this, our design here, like that. So from image, we are able to transform everything into what the user can now see on their browser there. And this project now, you can share it to anybody to see, which I'm going to be showing you how to deploy it in the next class there. So how can we make it available so that you can share it with your friend and tell them that, okay, this is what I'm learning this web development, and this is what I just worked on today. So you can check it out and see whether there's anything I need to work on it, or whether I need to make changes and so forth like that. Because there's no way you'll be giving them your system to be seen. So you can just send the URL, just like the Google Meet that we're using right now. What you just need is the link. You don't need to be here with me. So get the link, you paste it in the browser, and it will display the content that it needs to show to you. So the same thing here too. Everything that I have right now is on my system, and you cannot see it there on your own system. So how do you see it on your own system? We need to make it available. That's where deployment comes in. And I'm going to be showing this one in the next class before we work on the next project. So how can you make your design to be available online like that? And again, I'm going to be sharing the project file with you right now. So let me open my WhatsApp. I'm going to forward this thing to you, the project files, or the file. So all these project files, let me go back to, so let me move this WhatsApp to one side. Then going back to this. So this is how you'll be working with this design. So what you need to do is that anytime you need to work on any design there, you come into the folder where we have everything. Then from there, you pick whatever project you want to work on. Each one of them, they have their folder. So as you can see, there is this advice generator app. This is one design on its own. This is another design. This is another design, and this is another design. The one we work on today is known as QR code, and that's the same way I call the project name, as you can see. So once you open the folder, you are going to see all the necessary material that you need for that project. So under the design, that's where you are going to see what you want to work on. This is what is going to guide you, show you the different view for the design. As you can see, it's come with the mobile design and it's come with desktop, but both of them are the same. There is no difference from the design. But some other design, or most of the design you'll be working on later on, they have different view based on whether you're on mobile or you're on desktop. As you can see, what we have on mobile here is still the same thing we have on desktop, and that's why I started with this project. But if I go to this one, which is this bookmark landing page here, going to his own design, you see that this one have a lot of file compared to that one. As you can see here, this one have the active state, how your button is going to look like when the user on top of those buttons and so forth like that. It will tell you everything. And again, to how your design is going to look like on desktop. As you can see, this is the desktop design there like that. So this is how the design is going to look like on the desktop. What's wrong with this thing? It's loading. Oh yeah, so this is how the design is going to look like on desktop. But if I go to the other one now, you see that the mobile is quite different from what is here. Oh god, this is desktop, this is still desktop. Let me go to the mobile. Where are you, mobile? Where are you, mobile? Scroll. See, let me open it in a some file. So this is the mobile here, like that. So you can click on it and it's going to bring out the some file out there like that. So it's loading. Where are you? What's wrong with this system today? Okay, it's still loading. Yeah, so look at it now. So this is how it's going to look like on mobile. So when you are doing your design, you need to make sure that everything is laid out like this on mobile. As you can see, all these things, they are placed on top of each other. All this content here, they are placed on top of each other. But if you go to the desktop, you see that they are side by side. As you can see here, this is how it looks like on desktop, and it's being placed on top of each other on mobile. That's what we'll be doing in the next class. Not this exact design. This is not the design we'll be working on. We're going to work on simple stuff to see how you can make your design to be responsive. That's what we'll be talking about in the next class here. How can you make your design to be responsive? And what do I mean by that? When you are viewing this thing on mobile, it have the way you want it to look like. And when you are viewing it on desktop, it have the way you want it to look like. For example, here now, let me go to this site. If they are using responsive design, you see that look at everything. Look at the way everything is displaying on desktop. So this is the desktop here, like that. So this is the desktop design. Now let me go into developer tools. This thing is not allowing me to enter dev tools, but let me find a site that actually have this. Do I have? Let me just go to this site. Yeah, so let me go to this site. There, like that. This is a company I'm working for. Like that. So look at the design when you're on desktop. So this is how the design looks like when you're on desktop. As you can see, how things are placed side by side. But now let me switch to mobile. There, like that. So let me switch to mobile. You see that? Can you see now? A lot of things have disappeared, or some of them are now placed on top of each other. So we want to, this is what we'll be talking about in the next class. How can you make your design to be responsive? So this thing, even though the user is checking it on mobile, that doesn't mean the design should not look nice or everything should just join together anyhow. The design we work on today is simple one, because this is our starting point, and that's the reason why we need to work on simple stuff first. But as from next class, we are going to be talking about design that can change based on the screen that you are working on there, like that. What do you need to do? That's what we'll be talking about in the next class, and we use it there, like that. And after that, we talked about how you can now deploy it, like make it available to the people there, like that. So I'm going to share this file with you, the design, because it's a zip file. So what you need to do is to unzip the file. So what you are going to do is to unzip the file, and yeah, so this is a design tool. I'm going to be sharing it with you on WhatsApp there. So once you take it to your system, you unzip it, and once you unzip the stuff, then you have all this folder, you have everything here. So all this folder, then you cannot enter QR code, because I want to see your own design before the next class too. So the stuff that I just did today, you are going to do your own as an assignment there, like that. So I'm going to forward this into you, and you'll be able to do the same thing. So let me stop recording. That will be all for today class. Any questions? Stop.